All right, guys, welcome to our webinar session, the meetup about tools automation overview. So we recently decided to do this, and I want to introduce Michael Liu. He is a tech architect. We met in one of our previous meetup and entertainment partners, and now Mike is working in another company, but he is a creator or co-creator of the Nexial Automation. And Mike, welcome. Thank you for joining to our today's session, and thank you for sharing what you did. Can you tell a little bit story behind the Nexial? Like, how did you start doing this and why?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Mike, and very good to meet you guys virtually. So Nexial is a project that I started probably 3 years now, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. I can't remember exactly the dates. So I was working in this one company, and we had just a myriad of tools, like different kind of automation tools. You know, they are there for different reasons, different capabilities, and maybe they were inherited from different means and what have you. And it was getting very difficult to manage as a sort of a cohesive strategy for my team, for my company, really. Right? It was just getting very, we spent more time dealing with the vendors and figuring out all the features and figuring out how to make them work together, right? And so one of my first tasks joining this company at that time, this is maybe a little bit more than 3 years ago now, was to come up with a test automation strategy that could scale. And the company has a lot of different applications that they are owning or offering a lot of services, and so we have to test them. And not only that, they are not applications that meant to work in silo. Right? You have to test them across the board, across kind of a longer workflow. And it was difficult and sometimes unsuccessful, many times unsuccessful, trying to get these tools to work together nicely together. Right? So we started with the kind of obvious choice of, let's just find something else that will work, right? Let's find this one thing, this one magical tool, and slap it on, and then things start happening. And we look at multiple stuff out there. Now, to be fair, this company had many application of different architecture, right? So it was challenging from that standpoint. We had your standard web application, it's got mobile API, we have desktop application, various kinds, right? Some very old ones, right? I think reaching like 40 years old kind of desktop application. Some newer ones, very new in this like fairly updated .NET, WinForm type formats. There's all kinds of things in between, right? So and on top of that, we also have database applications, and anyway, a lot of stuff. So how do we get a tool that can support all of them, right? And so we started looking. There were some tools out there, unfortunately, very expensive for the company that I worked at, for the size of what we're trying to do, the number of people and all that. We kind of calculate the yearly, right, total cost of ownership. It was just not feasible. And so we kind of narrowed down some of the tools that we have, from I think it was around like 20 of them, like narrowing down to like as few as we can. Still too many, right? So anyway, long story short, I just thought, maybe I'll just kind of see what I can do if I try to come up with a way to kind of glue these tools together better, right? And so that started with, I thought, well, I want to make it work for the test community within this company. How do I make a tool that doesn't seem to be very developer centric, right? To be more tester friendly or test engineer centric. So I started writing some code to find a way to kind of make tools work together. And I thought, what, some of these things I can actually just do in the code directly. I can actually code that. And then to make a longer story shorter, that becomes Nexial. That becomes the starting point of Nexial, where we start to just automate things using this tool that I started with. Really, initially just trying to glue things together finally, I even gave up trying to doing that because some of these tools are just, the test automation tools in general, they don't, in many ways, they don't work well together, especially at runtime, right? When you're running it and you're trying to make it go to another tools and then get data from that tool and then bring it back to this, it just doesn't, they don't interoperate very nicely.
Yep.
So I started writing a tool myself, and then started getting one project to adopt, to try it out, another project wanted to adopt, and so on and so forth. And then eventually it becomes this thing called Nexial Automation. It was called by a different name. It was, I developed within that company. I had to reach out to that company's, senior leadership and to their, lawyers and all that, and got it okay to open source it. So it was finally open source. I think towards the tail end of 2018, something like that. So, anyway.
Awesome, great. So now it's available for public. So can you tell a little bit about Nexial? And I think you can start sharing what it does.
Yep. Actually, I already started sharing it. So if you're not familiar with Nexial or you want to learn more about it, or if I'm going too fast or I skip over some things, just please check it out. I think you can Google for this. Last I checked, it still works, right? So if you type in Nexial Automation, you should be able to find stuff here, right? Which basically leads you to this page. Okay. So Nexial Automation, it works on Linux, Mac, Windows, of course, right? And it works with some other commercial third party like Browser Stack, cross-browser testing, things like that, right? The idea was to come up with a tool that can let you do testing of different kinds of architecture. So it will be web, API, that could be REST, SOAP, right? Doesn't matter. Work with all the major databases. RDBMS, we also work with, we can also work with Mongo. And then any kind of browser, any major browser at least, right? And then desktop application, that part so far we only work on Windows, not the other ones, mainly because of demand. There's very, very few demand for getting desktop automation to work in other kinds of platform. So mostly Windows, but we do support that. And then what else? And also we support test automation on legacy system, mainframe, AS400, things like that, right? That's a bit more rare, but some companies do need to do that. And that's another whole set of challenge, which I won't go into too much because it's a huge, long detour there. So like that. And from we like to call them Nexial engineers, the people who are using Nexial. From the Nexial engineer standpoint, you are just working with a set of spreadsheets. So let me just jump right into that. So if you look at, I'll just put this away for a second. So this is a Nexial script, if you will. It's a regular spreadsheet, okay? The spreadsheet as spreadsheet will look like. I'm using a different tool here called WPS. It's a free tool. It's an alternative to Excel, only because I can put multiple tabs in here like that, right? So I don't have to jump around different Excel program, but regular Excel works as well. It is saving as an Excel file, right? Excel assets, right? Okay, so in this format, you would put in your automation line row by row. Each row represents one step, right? But in every one row, one step, you would describe some kind of a grouping, we call it activity. So that's basically these steps together, right? So that's one activity. You put some description in here. And for those of you who are familiar with BDD, so you recognize this is like BDD-like. So it's just really free text. You can put whatever you want. You can put color, all that stuff that makes sense to you and to your team, right? So that's just a free-form description. And then the actual command that you want to execute. And then each command will come up with most of the time need some parameters. So the parameters goes into here. We also have this section here called flow control. I'll go into more detail on that part a little bit later, but the flow control is basically a way to let you control the flow of your execution. So kind of think like if else, like that, right? If something happened, do this. If not, do something like that, right? And then you can add screenshots if you want to mark them with screenshots in cases where it makes sense. This specific one is about API testing, so it doesn't make sense to put screenshot because there's no screenshots. If I go to another one here, this one actually does a web automation, so you can see screenshot right there. I just mark them as X, and then you get screenshots in that same spot, right? So when the whole thing runs and finish. Okay, and you see some coloring that I put in here, very faint coloring. I did it on purpose just so that I can highlight different kind of sections, right? So that this is one script, one file is one script. So if you think in Excel terminology, one workbook is one script. And then each of the worksheets, right, we call them test scenarios. So this will be like 4 different test scenarios right here. Okay, then within scenarios, you have this grouping of steps, we call them activities. It's nothing more than just a grouping. They don't do anything special, but it's to help you with the understanding of this scenario, so you can read them pretty easily, right? I do a setup, I do some deletes, I do some creates, I do more creates, right? I do some value and I get out. And so you can kind of read like that in a simplified format, right? And so okay, so activity, then under activity you have this step, right? Each side the step. Okay. Now towards the very right here, you have this few other sections that you don't really fill in, but at runtime, Nexial will fill this in, right? So it will fill in if this step pass or fail, you get a pass or fail signal right here. If it fails, you will get a reason in here, like this thing failed because of whatever, and you get something in there, right? Usually they are kind of technical details. I don't want to say that's all the time, but that's usually meant to be like technical details so that you can take that information and start your triage from this point, right? So you can work with your developers or who can deal with the environment based on what is up here, right? And then elapsed time, of course. So every step takes some time. So the time that you take will be right here, okay? Also at execution time, or I should say post-execution time, this section also gets filled in with some summary detail. So then you'll see this thing run, and then the detail goes into here. So that's a spreadsheet that you work on. There's another spreadsheet that's meant for just data, right? So, and you can see by the name, this is notes. This is notes.xlsx. The data will be notes.data, right? And so you put the data in here, you just put like, here's my data name, right? And then your value. And so name value pair, they go down in this column like that, right? The nice thing about this is that it supports iterations fairly easily, right? So I can say I want to run, iteration 1 to 5, right? So then I can just put different names, John, James, Ellen, Sam, whatever, different names like that, right? And so what would happen is when I set up like this, it would run my iterations 5 times. Each time where the name is being referenced, it would be different names. Okay, so the nice thing about this is there's no change to my script. My script stays exactly like this. It runs 5 times, but each time wherever this name is being referenced, then different names get picked up. And you can then have multiple values in your age, right? 15, 16, so on and so forth, like that, right? So it gives you a very nice way to kind of lay out your data, and you can put as many iterations as you want, as much data as you want. And the more you put, then, right, the more this way you put, then the more iteration you will get. Also, you can configure, or you can control your iteration. You can say, let's say I have 5 in here. Let me just go fill this up a little bit more. Oops. Right. Let's say I have 5 iterations here, and I actually just want to run iteration 3 to 5. So just say 3 to 5, right? And you can also use the alphabets to reference that, because after you go into iteration 15, I think you lose count because these are letters right here, right? So you can just say, oh, I want to go from D to F, like that. Okay, and you can also mix and match. C to F, then maybe run B, then run C. So there's a lot of things you can control here to make it interesting, so that you could possibly maybe find another edge condition or another, it's almost like exploratory testing, where you run it kind of the standard, normal, predictable way, and then you go ahead and mess up that, right? Change that a little bit to see if the system will react differently or whatever. Here's an interesting concept, right? I will run, let's say this is registration, I'll run B, I'll run C, I'll run B again. The second time, the third iteration, second time running B, that should fail because I already registered that user, right? So how do I test that quickly? Maybe this is not my final automation, but how do I test that theory quickly? This is how you can do it. So you just run B, run C again, run second iteration, then come back to B, then it should fail. Then let's observe what the failure looks like. And then that helps us to plan out our negative testings, perhaps. Right? So like that, that's how you do it. I'm going to put everything back because I'm going to actually demo this in a second. Okay. So for every one script, you will have a corresponding data file, which is a nice idea. So then you have 5 scripts, 5 data files. You can keep things separate like that. But sometimes you have data that are meant to share, right? Like database connections, or like your base URL, your starting URL, or maybe some of your locators, right? These things are meant to share. So then how do you share them? If I put them in here, it's meant for this script. For another script, then I will have to replicate the same data again, right? So to circumvent that problem, which we did, we have another file called project properties, plain text file, just a properties file, and you can pretty much just put the same data in a plain text file there, and that will be shared by all your scripts in the same project, right? So let me quickly show you the structure of the project quickly. So here is my project. This is a sample that I'm going to run in a few minutes. It's called nodes, right? So I'm going to demo how to create nodes in different ways, in the API, in the website, in mobile apps, something like that. Within that nodes folder or projects, you have this artifact directory, and then there is your project property, which looks like this. Okay, so you have a variable name and then equals and then some value, right? So only thing you cannot do here is iteration, because you cannot go like that, right? Does that mean something different, right? So it's meant for data that is to be shared, such as locator, such as your this is my mobile profile, my mobile device profile, right? These are meant to share because you don't want to create the same thing over and over again in multiple scripts. So you do like that. And so by nature of that, these are not meant for different iterations. It's meant as a base set of data setup, right? So you can do it here, or you can do it in the data file, which goes in the data directory in here, like that. Okay. So we have script with data file, and then we have plan. And I didn't create any plans in here, but the idea with the plan will be that if you have multiple scripts, then you can put your scripts in here. Like, I have script 1, I have script 2, right? Script 3. And so you can plan out how you want to run multiple scripts in one go, right? That way, maybe this is, we can rewrite this a little bit for more context. Maybe this is the register script. This is the search product script, right? Maybe this is the order script, and this is like some kind of a back office, fulfillment script, something like that, right? This is maybe a feedback script, whatever you want, right? So this can be written by different people, by different teams, perhaps at different times. Then someone can then take these scripts and then stitch them together into a workflow, into a much longer flow. They can hit different part of the application. They can hit different application. Maybe one of them, this one could be something that works with SAP. I don't know, something like that, right? So you can lay it out and allow teams to work independently or work at how do I say, in different scopes, different kind of parts of the workflow. And then someone can then, put them together in some order that you like. When you're doing that, you can also describe the scenario that you want to run. So for example, in my notes, I have 4 scenarios. Perhaps I only want to run 3 of them. So I can say scenario 1, scenario 2, scenario 3. And maybe here I want to run scenario 4 and scenario 1, right? Whatever the case may be. So you can create different order structure for your test. And so the plan file is meant for doing something like that.
Mike,
Okay.
I assume that test script is supposed to be name of the Excel file, right? So at this moment you have a notes Excel file, so it's supposed to be like that, right? And then
like that,
got it.
And you can put extension. You don't have to. The Nexial is going to figure this out, right?
Okay, it will pick it up.
It will pick it up anyway. Yeah. Now this also assumes that this node is in the same project, but suppose it's not, right? Then you can put full path in there, and some other project, right? My other project, and whatever location you want to be. You can describe in full path. Or if you do it like this, then assume it's in the same, like in this project, it's in this nodes project. So,
Awesome. So you can even create different projects.
Yes.
And different scripts. Okay, that's awesome. And a question from we have in Q&A. What's the difference? What's the difference of nodes data from parameters value nodes?
Parameter value. You mean here?
I think he meant the nodes data. And then if you go to the script, like nodes.xl, I think there should be a parameters, right? Yeah. Param
Okay,
one.
I see.
Param,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So let me delve into that a little bit more. So let me just go to a free space here. Let's suppose I use the easiest one, assert equal, right? It's very straightforward. Everybody know what that means, right? So this command, right? This step or this however you want to call it, function, right? This command, you can see that it takes two parameters. So now I need to put parameter 1 and 2 with something, right? To make this work. Otherwise, this command would not know what to do. So you will put some data here and put some data there. The first one represents the expected. The second one represents the actual, right? So it's A equal to B, like that, right? Now, if you put it like this is the actual literal comparison, right? It's a character A equal to B. That's what that means. That's probably not what you want, right? So to do a more interesting comparison, a more meaningful comparison, you will make this into a data variable reference. So the way you do reference is using this dollar curly bracket, and then the variable name goes in here like that, right? So for example, I was putting down in here name and so forth, right? So if you want to go to the name, you go like that, name, right? So it's a name equal to mine. So that will be saying, is this data variable, it's the same value as the literal mine, like that. And you can do another one, right? You can compare another thing. Right? So that's also okay. So this is how you reference the data in your data file or in your project property, in your data, basically, whatever you manage your data, right? This is how you pull them out and reference them in here. And of course, depending on the command that you're using, you have to decide what you want to do, right? So let me just do another one that's a little bit more interesting now. Okay, something like this. This is, I mean, I rarely ever use this, but this is available, right? So I want to actually take some text and pull out some text from that to create another data variable. So you can do something like that. So maybe I go to name, and from character 1 to 3, right? Sorry, it's 0 base, 1 to 2, right? I want to create something like 1, 2, like that. I want to call it name initial, right? So you go to this name, take the first character and make it into another variable called name initial. So, you know, just depends on what this thing needs. You just provide the information as it comes, like that. Okay. Just real quick, by the way, Nexial has an easy way for you to kind of comment out some steps, right? Let's say you're running all these steps and you want to kind of skip over the step, perhaps, right? That's what you want to skip over. So you just do a strike through, right? So I have an example in here. This is a mobile testing, which I'll show in a few minutes. So here I'm crossing this out, right? So all you do is you just go, you only need to comment out just the command. Some people like to comment out the whole line. You can do that if you want to. You need not do that. But if you just want to comment out the command, just Control-5, right? Just cross it out. So that just basically stops that step from executing, and Nexial will continue down to the next step. And I did this because for the purpose of demo, I didn't want to shut down. I didn't want to shut down my emulator. I want to show you what it looks like at the end, right? So I just say, okay, let's not close the application. Let's not shut down. Let's continue. So at the end of the test, you will still see this thing like running there like that. So then when I'm done, you know, I just go back into here and I do a Control-5 again, and then it's back, right? So easy way to kind of like take some steps out of the way.
Mike, I think that would be great if you can describe a little bit more in details about the description, command type, and command. So in description, I assume so you using here so you can put whatever you want, right? So it's not the command that you are using from your documentation. In description.
So description is really a free-form text. Some people like to put description to describe. Sorry, some people like to use a description be a straight copy from their acceptance criteria, right? So they may have a JIRA story. There's some criteria. They just copy that and put it in here. That's fine too, because it's a way to map these steps to the actual requirement that someone else wrote. Right?
Got it. So it's a free form. So you put
Free
whatever
form.
you want just for your reference, right? So
right.
to understand what you're doing.
Exactly. But some people like to follow like a structure like this, kind of like a BDD-like style, right? Given, when, then kind of style. So you don't have to, but if you do that, it does give you that kind of very, very familiar look, right? You can put data variable reference in your description, like I did here, like this. So when it executes, this will be converted to the actual value, right? So then in that sense, your description can also be dynamic, right? So let me just describe very quickly what I'm doing here. I did it this way because it looks more structured, a little bit more sort of disciplined, and maybe someone in the audience might know BDD and they might, gravitate towards this, right? So the given, when, then syntax this is just free text. You can do that. You can like put some bold like what I did here, and I'm putting in this parentheses kind of format for anything that's kind of like a additional technical information. So not to say this is not documentation, but it's breaking out from that BDD a little bit, right? Like that. Like I could put this in BDD if I want to, but some of these are like kind of technical detail. I just didn't want to, it's really not part of the BDD sort of flow, right? So just put it like that, right? Otherwise, it's in this given, when, then format. Okay, that's it, right? Someone was asking about documentation. Let me just go to here real quick. So everything is in here. You can search for it. Let's say you're looking for assert equal. And you don't know what that is. Assert equal. And you should be able to find it right there. Okay. There are some spots that we have not documented very well. Just be very honest. There's some spot that's kind of missing. A lot of it is in here. And please understand, it's open source project. I do it as much as I can. I cannot do them all, but I'm trying to catch up, right? So there's some spot that's missing a little bit. If you go to this drop down right here and click on command references, you will see all the different commands that we support. They're all in here. There's some AWS stuff in here. We support data conversions between different file types like CSV. There's Excel in there. You see JSON, PDF. There's JSON here, JSON, XML on the bottom. There's all these different things, right? Database. We have Redis. There's Mongo. There's RDBMS. So you just kind of find the one that makes sense to you, what you're trying to look for. Let's say you're trying to process some sort of JSON. Okay, click on JSON, and then here are the different commands that you can do. So then find the one that's most appropriate to what you're looking for, and then you sort of go for that like that. Okay. Okay. Is there another question, or can I?
Yeah, that's great. And maybe you can also go through command type and commands. Like obviously you have to choose the command type.
Yes.
Right.
So command type is basically maps to this, right? If you go to documentation, click on command reference, here are my command types. The reason we do this is because we have too many commands. Last I checked, it's over 500. So I don't want to have a list of 500 for you to choose from. It's just way too many. And yes, we support GraphQL. If you go to WS, or you can just search for that, right? GraphQL. There it is, right? So it's right there. So you can kind of go through this documentation to see how it works. Okay. But anyway, you start from command reference, find the one that seems to be most likely what you're looking for. If not, do a search. You can probably find it. Okay. And then within, within that command reference, let's say I use JSON, then you have different kind of commands in that command type. It's just a way of grouping them together because it's too many to list them out in one shot. So back to my scripts, what you would do, let's say I'm doing JSON. So I just type in JSON, and then this dropdown will show me just the one that's meant for JSON. Right? If I do something like, let's say WS, which means web service or web services, right? Then these are the ones just for web services, and then GraphQL is right there. Right? So that's how you do it. And then once you pick the command, there's a little kind of hints that tells you what's needed. This tells me I need 3 parameters. So I put my URL, the body, and there's a data variable, right? So that's kind of what it does. We try to make it as descriptive or self-explanatory as we can. Honestly, sometimes it cannot be explained simply. So it's not always, it's not like you can always guess what it does. So please look at documentation for that. Some things are very obvious, right? Like the assert equal, like I can show you. That's just, right? That's very obvious what it does. But some things are just going to be complicated because they're complicated. So I'll give you an example here. Say it's a table or something, right? Oh, actually, not this one. That's it's not too bad. This is the one that's kind of complicated. Right. So it's very hard to describe exactly what that is, but please look at documentation. I can go into this, but that's going to take up quite a bit of time. There are such concepts as an infinite scrolling table. We support that by allowing you to save that data from the infinite table into a CSV. And then you can do comparison against the CSV. So that's how you do it, right? So you don't have to write code to do the scrolling and to collect the data. We collect the data, we do the scrolling and all that, but you have to configure it correctly. So that's what the config is. So a lot of detail in it. So just please look at documentation. And again, it's not that we're trying to make it cryptic. Some things are just way too hard to describe. So it looks like this, unfortunately, right? Okay. And then, there's another thing that I haven't mentioned yet. I'll just do a very quick kind of intro about that. And that's the concept of macro. And the idea is you can take a bunch of steps, right? Put it into another file and make it reusable, right? So the other file that you use is a macro file. It looks just like the script file, like this, right? It's just missing this top portion. This kind of again, this is just a sort of a metadata that you can put something like that. This is just up to you what you want to put in here. The macro doesn't have that because it's meant for reusable, and so it's meant not to have any kind of project descriptor. It's just like reusable functions. So you could put a bunch of steps in here, and then you can reference that as a macro in here, right? So you will go into something like this, macro flags, and here's my macro step, and you can put some input and output to the macro. So it's going to be too much for me to go into detail in that. Just know that Nexial supports macro. The docs has some information about that. That way, within your team or within your work, if you find things that are repeating many times over, you can put into a macro. You save yourself some trouble. You help your team as well, right? And then your teammates can also create macro. You can put in the same file, different files, macros. You can create different sheets. We call them libraries. You can create different libraries, right? So then eventually this project could have a lot of reusable stuff that you guys can trade up and use for each other, whatever. Right? So that's another thing that's kind of what Nexial supports.
Awesome. It's like reusable functions, basically, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Okay. There's a few things that's Nexial specific. We kind of, we created within the Nexial framework or platform in here that's unique in Nexial. So I want to describe that real quickly. One thing is called Nexial Expression. So like this, it's maybe not the best example, but the idea with the Nexial Expression is you can start out with a set of data, right? And you describe the type of that data, and then you can go to different operations of that data and possibly transforming the data type along the way, right? So for those people who are familiar with Linux or Unix, it's like that. The Unix has a way of doing piping their commands, right? So one command as an output, it becomes the input of the next command, and then its output becomes the input of the next command, and just you sort of chain them together, small little commands like that to accomplish big things, right? So for example, this is one example, right? So here, what I'm doing here is I'm taking all of this data, right, as a JSON type, and I'm going to extract out of that JSON type based on this this path information, right? So later on, when I describe the example in context, this will make more sense. But basically, I take this as a JSON, I parse this JSON, and I extract some data based on this path, and then I make that data that I extracted as a list. Then I store it as a different variable, and I calculate the size of it. Right. So this is doing like 4 or 5 different things. I could express this in 4 or 5 different lines, but it's making my scripts a lot longer. Right. It may be, I might be artificially blowing my test to be a bigger test when it's actually not a bigger test. So it's a way to kind of let you do small little things, but you kind of sort of chain them together to accomplish big stuff. So that's expression. And so I'll just show you real quick that. And for the most part, it's doing data transformation. So, please, if you're interested, read all about this. There's all kinds of stuff in here. But we do expressions in these different types. You can do an expression like you can deal with the Excel, which I actually have one, right? Take the Excel and then go through this operation. Maybe take the Excel, convert it to CSV, extract some data, make it into JSON, and then use it for a SQL statement, right? You can do all that with the expression. And if you do it right, it's just part of one command, right? So it can be very efficient. It can be a little bit maybe too difficult to read for someone who's not technical, perhaps, right? But when you need it to just do it quickly, this is a way to do it. So something that we kind of created within Nexial. So that's kind of unique in Nexial. Okay. All right. So shall I go to the example for this?
Yes, let's do this.
So to do that, I'm going to introduce another concept in Nexial, which is we call Nexial Interactive. Right? So let's think in terms of automation, right? You write your scripts in any form. It could be you write in Java, in Python, whatever, right? Or in Nexial. When you run it, it will run from beginning to end, right? And let's just say that you run it in Java, for example, right? Because I think a lot of people know Java here. By the way, I just found out some LinkedIn survey. Java is the now most popular language for test automation, whatever, right? Anyway, you write in Java or in Nexial, and when you run it, you run from beginning to end. Let's just pretend that somewhere in here, you found some errors, right? Something failed right here. So what would you do? Then you have to go fix this, and you have to rerun again. But this is step 25. What if this is step 50 or step 200 or something like that, right? To rerun it again, while it's possible, it will be a lot of work. It will be a lot of effort to try to rerun everything again. And plus, you might need to sort of reset your data or reset your environment, right? Maybe over here I'm doing all kinds of work that I have to kind of clear out to rerun this stuff again. So all that to say is that this kind of conventional way of doing test automation can be quite tedious. There could be quite a bit of work, right? Because you have to set up the data, get your environment right, start from the beginning again, so on and so forth. So in Nexial, we came up with this concept called Nexial Interactive, where we let you run a few steps at a time, and then you can rerun those steps after you supposedly fix them or change them, right? So think about this step here. This many. How many steps do I have here? I have like 52 steps. I could run this 52 steps in any order that I like. In fact, I wrote this script in a much different structure than this, right? I'll write this, and then I'll test them out, try them out with the Nexial Interactive. And if I like them, great, then I'll move them around and start organizing my steps. And then once I get a little bit more steps, I can rerun again that many more steps one more time. Make sure I like it, looks right. If it's wrong, I'll fix it, I can rerun, right? But I can also go back to previous steps and rerun some steps. So you can use Nexial Interactive to kind of do your development of your scripting or your script authoring, or you can use Nexial Interactive to do almost like a discovery, right? Like exploratory testing, where you're testing some steps and then maybe change some data and rerun that step again, see what happened to the application, right? So you can use that for discovery, right? So let me go ahead and run that right now so that it makes some sense to everybody what I'm talking about. By the way, Nexial doesn't have a fancy UI. We only have this in command line, right? So it's unfortunately to say for now, it's like a prerequisite to, right? You have to be comfortable with Excel and with command line. And the command line is fairly straightforward. We have a lot of batch file to like make this pretty easy, but you should not be afraid of command line to do this, okay? Okay, so let me go run Nexial Interactive. Where am I? Yeah, here. Okay, so I'm gonna run. So to run the Nexial scripts, you go into a command like that. So Nexial.cmd, that's the command to run the script, dash scripts, and then your script path, or the path to your scripts. That's how you run it, right? Now, if I want to run just the one scenario, in this case, I just want to run this reminders API. So I can just put like scenario and then spell it out, reminders API. Okay, if I press enter, it will run that whole thing, just like this, top to bottom. To run an interactive, I just say dash interactive, right? So what this is going to do is going to load up my script. I'm going to get like a menu right here on the console in a few minutes. And then that console will basically show me these activities and this script that it has parsed. And now I can say run certain steps here and there like that, okay? I'm going to, on purpose, make this fail for now so that I can fix it and you can see how that works, right? So I'll put something in here so that this is a bad token. So what this test is about, this is using a free tool here. It's called Reminders. Sorry, I forgot the website name. I was just on that yesterday. This thing right here. Yeah. So let me just go there real quick to show you what that looks like. So it's a website somebody created. Actually, I found that it's from this website. So this website lets you create some alerts, some reminder alerts for yourself, and you can have a webhook where the alerts will be sent to some other place, some other URL like that. You can do something like this. Let's make a little bit longer here. Okay, and it has a API to let you do that work. So I'm just using their API to create a bunch of alerts for myself, right? So to do the API, we'll be mostly using this WS command, right? And let me just jump to a free space in here. So the WS command lets you do something like that, WS. And if you want to do a get, an API get, just do get, and then fill in the detail here, right? If you want to do a post, then post. And you have puts, you have delete, you have all those things. Delete, heads, there's stuff with JWT, there's OAuth stuff in here. You can do patch, right? Whatever you want to do with, of course, GraphQL as well. So this is all the WS command. And so what you would do is, if you want to do a get, you call get, here's your URL, here's the query string of that get, and the response gets saved into a variable in here, right? So in context, I have a get right here, right? I'm calling some API here based on this information. So this RMD means reminders, right? So RMD API.base is over here, that. Right. So imagine this data being here. So basically it'll be HTTP as so and so forth, all that /user. Right? That's basically what that is. And so I can create this variable and make it reusable, because this is the part that's going to repeat over and over again, right? For all the different API, because it has the same base URL. So I just put it in here like that. Okay. And for query string, I don't have any query string in this case, so I can leave it. I can leave it alone like that. Okay, it's fine. But it's a little bit confusing whether that is an empty or a space, right? Because if I put a space in there, it still looks the same, right? So in Nexial, you can make it literal like that. This just means empty. It means exactly the same thing as not putting anything in there. But to make it more readable, we have this kind of a like a weird syntax like that. Okay, and then the variable is going to be called response. So I make this API call, this URL with this no query string, and save it to response. And then I can do something with the response after this line. So now what I can do is I can use this command to say, let's make sure that the response get a return code of 200. So like this, okay? And the response, it's a compound object or compound data type. I can get different parts of the data type from the response, right? I can get body, I can get content length, right? So just real quick, I'll just show you the docs for that. You can get a lot of stuff. I can go through all of them right now, but so you get all the response. You can get, you can get TTFE means time to first byte. You can get the elapsed time, the payload, the content length, cookie, header, whatever, right? Body, so we're interested in because the body contains that that response, in JSON format. So I can take this body and pass it to the JSON command and say that, hey, go to this body, look for a property called name, and make sure that that name is the same as that name. So this is a assertion, right? Assert the value of this is equal to that, like that. Okay. Now this API requires some authorization, which I already have. I've done that. Here's my authorization in here, right? But I messed it up on purpose just to show you a failure so I can fix it, right? By the way, Nexial has a way to let you encrypt sensitive information. Okay. So let me just go to another command and I'll show you. So Nexial encrypt, and then you can put something like that, some secret like that, and you'll get this, right? So you can store this instead of storing secret plain text. You can store that, and that way, that's why it looks like this, right? So that way, it's not so obvious what the actual secret is, right? So if you need to kind of hide certain information because maybe the database connection or something like that, you want to hide it, and you can hide like that. Okay, so I'm going to take a token, put it in here, rerun this, and see what happens. So now let me run just these steps. I'll run from here up until 9. Okay, and 9 should fail because my auth key is completely messed up right now. Header, what that means is just to put some information into the HTTP header. So I'm putting authorization and content type. That's what the API requires. So I'm going to do that, right? But my token is wrong. I did it on purpose. So let's see what happens if I run from 5 to 9. So in interactive mode, now it's loaded up in here. To run the steps, I will use command 6, right? So you can see right here, 6. 6 means step, right? And then space, and then my steps, 5 till 9. Okay. And then if I do X, that will execute. So then I execute my steps. Oh, sorry. This is going to pass because I didn't save my data. My bad. Let me redo this again. Sorry. I need to save this because it's still not saved. So save it.
Like there was a question, what is the encryption level?
So it's not, it's a bidirectional encryption. I think it's, I need to look at the document. I think it's 128. And there's an internal key built into Nexial. To be honest with you, it's not the best way to really hide real secret. If you have social security number, please don't use this. It's just meant for a way for people not to get it too easy. This thing is open source, so if you really want to find what it is, you can find out, right? And there is a key somewhere in there, but it is well, I just left it as it's kind of time-based, so it's a little bit tricky to figure out what it is, but you can figure it out if you really want to do it. So I'm telling you straight out that it's not the most secure thing, but in sort of the test context, it's probably okay, right? Don't put credit card number, don't put real information in there, please, because it's not. If someone wants to crack it, they can. Right? I can crack it, right? So don't do it. But you know, within the context of a project, and you know, maybe it's okay. It's secret enough, it's encrypted enough, so that most of the times it will suffice what you need. Okay. Anyway, I'm gonna run this again. So 5 to 6. So 6, right? 5 to 9. Right? 6 is to run steps. 5 to 9 is the step 5 to 9. Now run it. And when it runs, you see something in green, something's in red, right? So green means pass and red means fail, right? And the one without colors is just kind of verbose information. Like I'm running the step 8 now, I'm running the step 9 now, and like that, right? So here it's all the pass. I said headers. This is my actual secret right here. It's not a secret anymore because I can show you what it is. But this has this has all the extra data in there, and that's why now it fails, right? So if you recall, I did the get, and I have a variable called response that contains a response. If I want to see what the response looks like, I can just print out in here and just show you, right? So the response looks like this, where the return code is 401, the status is unauthorized, and there's a body in there that says I'm unauthenticated because I messed up, right? So that's it. This actually happens to you. You make some mistakes, and oh, that's not good. I want to fix this. So you can go back into here, fix your data. Okay, save it, and in Nexial you reload. So reload is using this right here, L to reload. Okay, so L to reload, and I'll run the same step again, right? And this time you should pass. So now you pass, right? And in fact, I can still go. You can do it inspect. You can still go back to look at the data again, right? So response, and now I get all kinds of interesting stuff. It's 200 now, and I have the data in here. Okay. I was mentioning about the Nexial expression. So we can actually use expression in here to try things out, right? So for example, I can try out that same thing that I was talking about just now. The response has a body. Oops. And now I want to see what the body looks like, but I want to print this body. This is kind of in a compressed format. It's not very readable. Maybe I'll make it a little bit more readable like that, right? So it looks like this. Look, it looks better. So now what if I want to extract some data out of that? I want to extract name. So extract name. And there's my name, right? I can extract name, and maybe I want to extract something else different, right? Email, right? But here's the nice thing about this. Once I extract this information, like this email, what I get is this data, which now it becomes text, right? So if I go to expression there, then I can jump from JSON, which is what I'm doing right now, to text. And in text, I get other operations. So maybe I want to make it uppercase. Right? So you kind of go from one data type to another data type like that just by using operations. Maybe now I want to count the length of it. Right? So I can kind of keep transferring the data. I started with this response body, which is the full JSON. I make it pretty. I extract the email from that, make it uppercase, calculate the length. Right, and I can keep going, right? Maybe I want to do something silly like that, multiply by 25, and I get that, right? So you can just keep the operation, keep going, and it literally is like you saying, you know, JSON, and then extract, right? And then uppercase, and then get the length, and then multiply, right? That's the thought process, then, right? So the expression allows you to do something like that. And once you have it, you can take this data and save it to something else, and you can use it again for something else as well. So a lot of possibility in here, right? Okay, so I did that now. This is the get, and now I'm just doing some validation, right? And let me just go finish. Oops, sorry. Let me go finish the first portion right there. Right, I'm gonna do these 3 steps. So I think I did 9. So I'm gonna do 10 and 11. 10 and 11. So let me go there. So 6, 10, and 11. And that passed. It validates that my names are the same as the actual, right? Okay. Now here's a part with the flow control, right? So here, what I have is possibly that in this case, I might already have some data that is conflicting with my test. I want to delete those data, right? So I want to do a get of all my reminders and see if I have data in there. And if I do, I'm going to delete them. That's the whole point of this, right? But I want to do this in kind of the if-else sort of control, right? If I have data, delete them. If I have no data, continue on like that. So you can imagine the if part has a bunch of steps like this, right? I have some data, I'm going to repeat these steps. If I have no data, just continue on like that. So Nexial has a sort of syntax to call it this repeat until. The idea is to repeat this whole section here over and over again until this condition becomes true, right? So what is this condition? The condition is that this counter is greater or equal to that value. This value is coming from here, which is basically going into the body, right? And checking how many data do I have, how many lines of data do I have, how many reminders do I have in this case, right? So let me run in slow motion. So let me run 13, so you can see what that looked like, okay? So 6, 13, okay? And now let me go look at my data, and you can see that I have some data in here. I'll make it a little prettier, right? Like that. So you can see that I have some reminder. I did a test before, so I have some data in here. So for every testing, every reminder that I have in here, I want to remove them. I want to basically delete them, right? So I need kind of like a loop, like go through everyone and delete them like that. Because the API doesn't have a facility for delete all, I have to do a delete one by one, right? So now what I can do is, okay, for that many data, I want to extract out of it just the ID, right? Just the ID. So it looks something like this, right? So extract from data, let me just go to the top here. Data is right here. From data, underneath the data, go extract all my ID, and basically I get this. It's like a list, right? So fine. I'll make a list out of that, and just for printing purposes, I'm going to print it out single line for each ID. So it looks like this. So I basically have to look through all these now, and then I can do something with that data. Okay, so that's what this is doing now. Now that I run this, and I have a count of how many reminders I have, I can use that count over here like this, right? So what this is saying is that I'm going to proceed with this repeat until this whole section if that count is defined, if I have something to count. If I don't have any data that there's nothing to count, then it's not defined, then it will skip over this entire section, right? And then you'll continue on to doing something else like that, okay? So if I run in context, now I will run just that whole section there. I was doing 6 for running steps. I can also do 5 for running activities, right? Right there, okay? And so for 5, I want to run this activity, number 2 in here, okay? So as a convenience, you can just type 2. You can also type the whole thing out, delete, like that. You can type the whole line out, but you can just do 2. That will run the second activity, okay? And X to run it. And so now it's going to go through and run that. And so let me blow this up a little bit so you can see what's going on. So it's doing this loop now, right? So again, same thing, I extract the data out and I have data right now. So now I'm going to go into the loop, and in the loop, it's doing the delete right here, right? Delete, and it's okay, right? And then go to the next loop, it's doing another delete right there, and it's okay. And just continue on that next loop, delete, delete, delete. And eventually at the very end, I delete everything and then I'm done, I'm out. So I know I'm going kind of fast, and this cannot be a full tutorial because it's going to take too much time. But the idea is Nexial supports the sort of looping concept, as well as what I talk about, the iteration concept initially. Right? So you can do both of them. Right? So you can do a loop within your scripts, or you can loop your entire scenario using iteration. So there's like two kinds of loops, and you can combine them together so that you can use it for doing like looping the loop, like a nested loop like that. You can do it like that as well. Okay. Let me get this thing to all the way to finish, and I'll talk about the next one, which is actually, let me just redo everything from beginning again. So it's going to create reminders, and using the API, right? It's going to create a bunch of reminders. Okay. So this is loop number 5. In here, I'm creating another reminder now. In this case, it's called finish the book. And I call this API to do that, and it's successful. Here's my data return back. I look at the whole thing. Now, if I go back and call this 13 again, I should see all the data that I created, right? So I can go into, oops, where am I? I can go run just the step 13. Response. And there's that data. And so again, I'm just going to print it out, make it look a little nicer so you can see what I'm doing. And then there's that data that's created. Right? I deleted them before, and now recreate them again right here. Okay. So for API, there's no UI. It doesn't look very interesting, but the point is you can use Nexial to do UI testing. You can do the API testing. You can do calling the API by the verbs, right? Get, post, delete, that sort of things. You can do assertions. You can use different other commands to do extraction of data, to do more assertions, things like that. Okay. This example, I'll try to go faster now. It's on the web. So in the web, you will use the web command instead. Okay. Nexial is based on Selenium, and for mobile testing, Nexial is based on Appium. So think in terms of that, those technology. The things that you can do in Selenium, probably you can do the same thing in Nexial, and probably even more than that, right? Same thing, the things that you can do in Appium, you can do it also in Nexial, because Nexial is based on those things anyway. So it's an open source project that is based on other open source projects, right? So a lot of things is out there. For the web, you more likely than not use a locator. So here are my locators. Go here. So you can see right here that this is a locator for some whatever that is, right? So I'm going to look for it. It's in here. That. So Nexial supports all the standard Selenium locators. Let's go into documentation so you can see that real quick. Go into command and go into web. And it's located, right? So ID name, these are the standard 8 that's come with Selenium. So we already have that. You can just use it as exactly as how you use in Selenium. It's not a problem. We create 2 more just for convenience. One is called text, right? And the idea is you can just describe like that, my text like that, just like this, right? So next we'll go look for that text. Like, do I have an element with a text welcome? But we add a little bit more to that, where you can do what we call polymatcher. You can do this kind of the sort of shorthand that says, find me an element where the text contains order complete, right? And this syntax, you can do many things. You can do order, I can contain, start with, I forgot all of them. Start with any case, right? Oh, there it is, these ones, you can do it like that. So that way your syntax can be a little bit simpler to look at. Like you can see like this, right? That might be easier than to create an XPath for the same thing. Although you can do an XPath, this is a lot more readable maybe, right? So for that reason, we basically give you this shorthand. Behind the scene is converting to XPath for you. Nexial is doing that work for you, okay? Another one is called layers. So this is a pretty new feature in Nexial. And the idea is to let you describe your elements in its hierarchy, but at every hierarchy, you can use different kind of locators, right? So in this one hierarchy, I'm using that locator. In the next hierarchy, I'm using that locator. And you can kind of mix and match. That way you can maybe find the most optimal locator per hierarchy of your element, right? So let's say you want to go to the table. Do I have an example in here? Like that, right? So maybe I want to go into this one table, and there's a class, so I'll just use CSS. So I CSS dot that class. then I'm going to go into some data in here and I need text. So I cannot use CSS anymore. I need to use XPath. So I use XPath in here. And then once I have it, maybe the easiest way is just use text. So in this case, 3 layers, but you can describe each layer with different locators. So if that's of convenience, we have that capability. You can do that as well. Sometimes it's more readable. Sometimes it's easier to get the data that you want. If you force yourself to use XPath all the time, sometimes it's very long and very difficult to read that. This kind of break things out a little bit, right? But anyway, the point is, Selenium locators are right here. You can use it just as it is. You just have to prefix that with the right tag. Like name will be, you just say name, right? ID, you say ID, right? So XPath is the only one you don't have to say anything because XPath has a very readable format, so we can tell that it's XPath. But CSS is difficult to tell, so you have to put like CSS equals something like that. Okay, so here, all my locators is described in this format. So you can tell these are all my locators and they are very, very Selenium-ish, right? I have a few layers in here, some text, but more likely than not, I think you can read them, right? They're pretty obvious what they are. So here I'm just going through this website called Todoist, creating the same list, okay? So let me run this quickly. So I'm going to go into the Todoist, which is this one right here, Todoist scenario now. Okay, now run that, right? Okay, so it logs in and everything is pretty standard as what you expect because it's run on Selenium. So, whatever Selenium can do that. That yellow flashes that you see right now, a little yellow, that's a Nexial feature to do highlighting so that you can see the element that it's working on, right? Just to make it a little bit more interactive. Oh, there's a problem. Okay, don't know what the problem is. I'm just going to continue here. Okay, now I'm creating the list now. Now, as you create a list, you see that it's creating different data, and you might be wondering where the data is coming from, right? So actually, the data is an Excel file. So Nexial can read that Excel file, convert that into CSV, pull the data that I want, and then put them in here like that, right? So I'll show you that when this test is finished, so you can see what that looks like. And I know I'm going over time. I'm sorry. I'll try to be. I'll speak faster, right? Okay, that was the whole test. It's finished now, right? So where's the data coming from? So it's coming from this file, which is this Excel, the reminders.Excel SX. So it's right here. It looks like this, right? In that test, I'm only using this part of the data, right? In my previous test with the API testing, I'm actually using all this data because it has alarms, right? In this test, I'm just creating the data. So in Nexial, you can just say, hey, Excel, go read this Excel file, right? Read from this worksheet in this range, and this range might be too much, so I'm going to pack it, which means I'm going to remove all the empty columns, empty rows, right? Convert that into a CSV, store it so that I can use it later on, and then that CSV that I'm using in here, right? Go to this row, go to this item. So it's like saying, go to this row, go to this item, like that. And then every time when I do a loop, I just say, go to this row, go to that item, and I can pick up data this way. Okay, so that's how you get this data created like this. Okay, but you can see that I haven't really switched out to in another like session. I'm in the same interactive session. I just move from this scenario to that scenario, right? I can easily switch back to this scenario again to do the API testing, right? Or I can rerun this Todoist testing again. So the point here is, in Nexial, whether you're running interactive or not, you can go to different part of the technology fairly quickly, right? You can go into API to web, go to mobile, back to API, back to web, so on and so forth like that, right? Okay, let me go switch to one for the mobile now. This one is for Android. So for testing purposes, we can run on real Android. Actually, I don't have an Android phone, but for demo purposes, I'm going to put on the emulator, because otherwise it's just hard to see it on my actual phone. My camera is right here, right? So, this is going to run the mobile testing using Appium, and you can see the device coming up. Where is it? There it is. Okay, so I'll just put it right here. Okay, and this is going through an app, so it's installing the app right now as we speak, right? The mobile testing required this thing called the profile setup. So every profile is one device. In this case, it's an emulator, still a profile. So you have to go to that setup. So it looks something like this, right? basically says that, I give a profile name like this is my name. Here's my app, and here's the form that I want to load. It's an Android, it's this, emulation, whatever, right? And then all the different information you want to set up for that specific profile. Then this profile name then get used in here, like that, right? So you basically says use this profile, and Nexial is going to read all this information and then create a connection to that profile. So it's doing it right now, going through that test, right? So it's a very simple app. It's like the free one that I can find. I've used it for some other ones that's a lot more complicated than this, but those are commercial ones. I cannot show them without that company's consent. So this is like a freebie out there. So, so anyway, that's what that looks like. And again, because it's Appium, so all the Appium locators, you can use them, right? Nexial also supports, we also create a few other ones that's meant to be as a convenient, like that text locator that you saw with the web automation. You can also do it in mobile now. So if you're looking for something with just a text, you want to point to that element, you can just say text equals, and then whatever text you see. Right? Okay, that's my whole list, right? Let me do one real quick with iOS. For iOS, I'm running on Windows right now, so I have an iOS. I'm just going to run this. I have my remote desktop in here for my. Let me just connect here real quick. The test is already started. Here it is. Okay, so I don't know if people knows it or not. To say real quick, but Appium can be run remotely. So in this case, here's my Appium server running remotely, right? In the case of the Android test over here, the Appium was running locally on my Windows. So Nexial can connect to a local Appium or remote Appium. It wouldn't matter, right? But in this case, it's remote. Here's my iOS. This is a simulator. Again, it's hard for me to show the real device, even though we support that. You can quite see it. So I'm just doing an emulator here. And then off it goes. You just create this is just a reminder app that comes with Apple. And again, we have done other more complicated applications, but I can't show you because they are commercial and they are, intellectual property and all that kind of stuff. So this is just a standard Apple app.
Mike, there is a question. Do you guys have samples of web API tests on GitHub?
Yes and no. So yes, but some of them are in the form of a tutorial, so they don't look like one test. They look like all broken out like that, right? What I can do is this one that I'm running right now, I can just make this available, right? So let's connect later. Like, let's see how I can make this available to other people. They can just take the whole project and do whatever they want to do with it, right? I'm happy to let them just have this. It's all the things I'm doing here is all freebie stuff. Only thing is I'm gonna maybe block out some access key and things like that. You have to go get your own key, right, for that API testing or the Todoist. Just get your own key, get your own login. You can do it yourself. Right? Okay, so that's the whole thing now. I just run it, right? So you can see that I did an Android, I did a iOS, I have a web, I have API. If I have time, I can do more. But I'm switching between all this different kind of application architecture within the same Nexial script, right? I could just as easily put all this into one scenario, which even makes a point stronger that I can switch between different kind of application architecture without switching to. I just go between web to API to mobile and back and forth like that, right? So that gives me a lot of convenience because you can think of different use cases where I can take this data, copy this data, and use it over here, or use it over there, or compare this against that, right? There's all these different things I can do because it's in one test. Right? So,
do you need to worry about the configuration of WebDriver, Appium?
Appium you have to set up, so you have to do a one-time setup, and then I think after that, and so we support the Appium server, the nodes module. You can go install that, point to it, we'll make it work. Or you can just download and install the Appium desktop, which I think comes with the Appium server as well, right? So that setup you do have to do. WebDriver, you don't have to do anything. Nexial will download that for you. Nexial comes with Selenium and the Appium API. So if you install Nexial, which is just a zip file, by the way, there's no installation, just unzip, that's it, right? But Nexial will download the WebDriver for you, and it will update the WebDriver for you, right, automatically.
Awesome.
I want to show you this one real quick. So this is Nexial like output or report, if you will, right? So the test that I ran, this is me running it beforehand, showing you all the tests that I ran, all the how many, 4 different scenarios, right? So let me just collect everything here. Oh, sorry, is this the right one? Oh yeah, this is the right one. Sorry. So in this test, you can see that this is my script. You can actually click on it. You can get the actual file if you want, right? Here's the result. I'll show you in a second. But in the scenario, I have this reminder API. I have to-do-list. I have Android, which also prints out some profile about the device. iOS, here's my profile, and here's my test. And you can see kind of summary information, how many ran, how many passed, and the time they took, right? And all that, right? So you can also turn off some information. Maybe this part here is too much detail, so you can turn it off. You know, maybe I can turn off the references. I don't want that much. I just want to see this very basic summary, right? Then I can click on that, which is basically this file right here, right? So let me bring this up. This is the actual execution, okay? Similar information you can see here in the first page, we created that. This is the actual test, right? So my test that I ran, to the right of it, you can see the pass and fail and the timing information of that, right? And this one right here, this get, the response of that get is in here. So we store everything into like a separate log file. So if you need to see the actual detail, right? Here's my request, here's my response. So it's very easy for troubleshooting. If you have to work with a developer, like, you know, I get this real data, you want to show that, just click on it, and there's that tells everything, right? Here's my get, that's what I'm doing. Here's my my response, right? I'm gonna do another one that's more interesting. Here's the delete. Let me do a pose. That one. This pose. So here's what I posted, right? Time and so forth. Here's the data that I posted, and here's the response that I got. And that way, you want to do triage, you want to do troubleshooting, you can just go right from here. For web API, screenshots right here, right? So it went to a different screen. There, that's my screenshot. And you know, you can click through them, and it jumps to my other window. So like that. Anyway, so then you can just, and then mobile, same thing. You can take a screenshot. So here's my mobile screenshot. There it is. Right. Let's do another one. Click. There's another one like that. Okay. And iOS is the same thing. And that's the interesting thing about iOS. If you remember, the iOS is running on my Mac right now on my PC. But the screenshot is on my PC, right? So interesting concept that it runs somewhere else, but you can capture moment in time and put it on your Windows or anywhere you want, right? Nice. In fact, we're doing this remote transferring at the same, so you don't actually have to walk to your Mac. You just have to run it from here, and then you get the data. Here's another one, right? Okay, so all the data is stored in my output directory, right? So again, here's my nodes application. Artifact is all my scripts and all my artifacts. Output is all my outputs. They're time-based, right? So here's my timestamp. And within that, you have a capture directory that has all the screenshots. There's all my screenshots right here. Now you can go through them one by one if you want, or you can just follow the test report that I showed you earlier on and just follow that and click on that. They are also named in a way that's fairly easy to follow if you really want to follow that. How do I do that, right? So you can see that this is coming from this scenario, this step, right? So scenario is Android. A6 is that step row 6, basically, right? So you can find out where it is as well, pretty easily. These are my screenshots. I didn't do it, but we can also do a desktop recording. You can actually save your entire desktop, show it as a screencast, so we can record that as well. All your API is right here, right? So all this data, here's all the detail of all the calls, right? So that's one call. There's another one, right? And in addition, we have a summary. So this is actually kind of interesting. And then I'm done. Okay, so this is a summary of all my execution that I ran. Now, this is a CSV file, actually, right? So I could soon copy it as a CSV. Okay, I could bring this up and maybe, you know, do some, I don't know, like this, and maybe like that, like here like this, and create a graph. Actually, I'm not doing this right. It'll be like this. I don't know. Graph is not my specialty, but there's a way to create graph. I got. But anyway, you can plot graph from here now, or you can do tally, right? You can do some kind of like average, right? Oh, I know. I have to convert this to a real Excel. Sorry, that's my bad. It's not Excel. That's why none of these things actually really work. But I can save this now as an Excel, and then I can do all the Excel functions. I can create graph. I can plot, summaries, standard deviation, all that, so that I can quickly figure out within this test that I ran, right, which one's the slowest, which one's the fastest, what's my average, so on and so forth, right? With very little effort. So, okay. All right, I'm going to stop. Sorry, I went over time and just there's a lot of information to share, but I hope.
No, that was honestly very, very interesting and useful. So thank you very much, Mike. Let's ask really quick, like, guys, if that was useful, please hit the plus sign. And Mike and I, we were thinking about to do maybe a quick 3 days tutorial or something, right? Like, we'll see how the response will be, but maybe we will do the free tutorial how to use Nexial. Right, where is the plus sign? Just like this, like this.
And it's okay to put many plus signs.
Yeah, exactly.
If you really like it, just put as many as you like.
All right. Oh, I see. Wow, nice. Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, guys. All right.
Thank you, guys.
We'll let you know. Just join to our Slack channel, stick there, and follow for our updates. All right. And thank you and have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.